Sometimes before we come up with that big idea, we do lots of dreaming. So today we're going to create that dreamy area I assume our minds go to before we come up with those big ideas. As always, I'll make sure to put everything I use today into the description box down below, so that way you guys can shop those items if you would like to. If you're new to my channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and let's wake up, prep these tumblers, and slay all day. Let's do this. On a regular 30-ounce curved tumbler, I went ahead and I prepped it and I primed it in this metallic gold by Rust-Oleum. For our base today, we are going to be doing the Tack-it method. So if you've never used Tack-it method before, this is simply a glue that once it is dried, it is still tacky to the touch. So that way you can burnish down ultra fine glitters to make a super hollow shine or shifting shine, depending on what kind of glitter you're using. Now, everybody has their own variation on how to do the Tack-it method. I just simply put my glue down and I just load up my tumbler really well with that glue. Sometimes people like to do 2 layers of the glue after it is dried the first time, or kind of water it down so that way you don't really see brush lines, but this really doesn't bother me, so I'm just going to do 1 layer of glue. And after you're done loading on your glue, all you want to do is set it off to the side and let that completely dry. You'll know it's completely dry because it will be crystal clear. Now, like I said earlier, this does work the best with an ultra fine glitter or mica powder, but you can also use regular glitter if you'd like to, and I've even used chunky glitter with this method. But again, this way works the best. So as you can see, that glue is crystal clear, but if you were to kind of give it a little tap, it would still have this real sticky feeling to it. So now all you want to do is take your glitter and completely load up your tumbler. And this glitter is called Jupiter, and that's from socglitters.com if you would like to purchase it. Now is the time for burnishing. So with about medium pressure, I'm going to go ahead and smooth over the surface of the tumbler, flattening down all that glitter. You can see how there's a deviation right there at the corner there. So I'm just going to take my finger and rub over it one more time, and there you go. Now it kind of looks like liquid to me. That's how you want that to look. So you'll know if it's not burnished down properly because it will look different from the rest of the surface. It'll have like a darker look to it. So then again, you just come through and keep pushing down until it is nice and smooth. So I'm just going to continue on with burnishing all these glitters down. Now this is a messy process. I'm just letting you guys know it is very messy and these glitters kind of fly around. So I'm just letting you know. Before we apply our first coat of epoxy over top of our raw glitter, we need to seal it down. So you can either use your spray sealer or you can use your liquid sealer. And I'm going to be using my liquid sealer today because it is kind of rainy and yucky out and I don't feel like going outside. So that's what I'll be using to seal this down. Now, after my sealer has fully dried, I'm going to apply 30 milliliters of epoxy over top of my tumbler here. I'm going to let that cure properly, and then we are going to move on to the next step. Found this grouping of stars right on Creative Fabrica, so I thought it was kind of cool. You could choose whatever stars you'd like. So the first thing you want to do when you bring them in though is you want to go up to the top and you want to make sure you ungroup them all, and then you can decide from there which ones you'd like to use. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete all the ones I don't want to use. And one thing I forgot to show you guys was if you want to keep them in this particular shape, so the little star, big star, medium star kind of thing, you just want to highlight everything and you want to make sure that you attach everything all together so that way it cuts just like this on your mat. And because I'm using such a big tumbler, I really wanted a big impact, so I made these kind of big. These are almost 3 inches by about 2.5 inches. So I'm just going to get that cut out on some vinyl. And our epoxy is cured, and look at that color. It's so pretty. It shifts between kind of this greenish and red color, and obviously gold is its main color. Now we are going to take those stars that we had cut out and we're just going to place them randomly around the tumbler. Now I wanted to fill mine up as much as possible, so that's what I'm going to be doing. And of course you can add as many stars as you would like. But these are essentially going to act as a mask, so that way once we're done painting, you remove the backing and the glitter still stays bright and vibrant. Now these stars have a lot of little pieces to it and I don't want them to kind of furl up on us while we do our painting. So I'm going to give it a coating of spray sealer before we move on to the next step, and that's going to help out with the inks going up underneath our decals. Now I dug through my basket of alcohol inks and I dug out a dark blue, a light blue, and all kinds of other blues in between. I'll make sure to put exactly what I used in the description box for you guys. I also have a little dish here for rubbing alcohol. I have a brush and I have a paper towel to clean my brush off if I need to. So starting with our light blues first, all I'm using is just a medium-sized round brush for this. Again, you guys can just utilize whatever you have on hand to do this. It doesn't have to be this round brush in particular, but you just want to go ahead and put a little bit of rubbing alcohol onto your brush, which is what I was doing in that dish up there at the top. And then I'm going to take a bit of my blue inks and we are just going to dabble that across the surface, and you will kind of watch it disperse and kind of do its own thing, and you just want to make sure it doesn't run. So I'm just kind of catching runs as I go, so that way there's no run marks. So now I'm just going to kind of let you guys watch me work a little bit. I'm just going to be switching in and out between these lighter colors and dabbling it onto my surface. After I did about half of my tumbler, I came through with just rubbing alcohol on my brush and I just dabbled it a bit more just to make sure that I blended all those colors together really well. Now when I move on to the second side of my tumbler here, I want you guys to notice that I am going to be leaving gaps of the gold peeking through. That's perfectly fine. You just want to make sure that your stars pretty much have a little bit of that shading over top, so that way once we pull up back that vinyl, they do have that nice shape to them. After you have your base fully loaded up with all your light blue colors, now we're going to add a little bit more dimension with the darkest blue that you have. I wanted my dreamy landscape to go at a diagonal, so I'm going to take a bit of my blue here and I'm going to start that diagonal motion with my ink. So this is extremely potent ink here, as you can tell, and I'm just going to get it going right in a diagonal. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't want it to be perfect. It has to be a little blotchy around the edges. So you just mainly focusing on getting that coloring straight up the center, and then we're going to come through and blend out our edges. So essentially when you're ready to blend your colors out, you stop getting the main color itself onto your brush, and all you want to do is pick up a bit of the rubbing alcohol all by itself, and that will just kind of bloom the colors out that already exist on your base. So you just tap around the edges, letting all those colors bloom and mix together and make all that dimension that you would like. Now once I got one side done, I just flipped it and did the same thing where I came through and added another swirl around the back and just made sure I came through and blended it all out. And after I was done, this is optional, I took my spritz bottle and I'm going to hold it very far back. It's like up by my head and my tumbler is like way back too. And I'm just going to lightly mist my tumbler, and it's going to produce even more like little bubble looks. And so again, this is optional if you want to do this. I just really like the way it looks. It just kind of adds more to that distressed, dreamy look. And right after that, we are going to very carefully pull back our vinyls, exposing our star shapes underneath. Now we're ready to apply a coating of epoxy over top. So I took about 20 milliliters of epoxy. I'm going to go ahead and apply that over top of our surface here. And I'll get that onto my turner and let that cure before we move on to the next step. Now to make our beautiful fluffy clouds. So I'm just going to be using a basic acrylic paint. I have two different brushes I'm going to be working with. I have a little stippling brush here. It's just a very tiny little brush. And I also have a big mop brush for feathering out our clouds. So I'm going to use the little teeny tiny brush first, and I'm just going to take just a small amount of that paint. As you can see there, I dabbed off quite a bit. You don't want it too loaded up. And we're pretty much going to be doing the same exact concept as we did with our alcohol ink base. So we are going to be doing just a very light feathered background and then making our way out to very bright highlighted areas. So again, we're just keeping in mind that this is the bottom layer and working in that diagonal and actually also working with kind of the shapes that the alcohol inks made on the base. I am just going to take my little tiny brush here and just kind of make these top swirling motions, just kind of following a bit of the pattern underneath. I will just make these abstract lines and then I come through with my big fluffy mop brush and I gently pull down a bit and then I just very gently, like I'm very gently touching the surface. I make these swirl motions to kind of blend that coloring out just a bit. But I think it's always that first line, you're kind of going into the unknown, you don't know what it's going to look like, and then you kind of do that first line and you get going and you're like, oh, I see it. So I know you guys are doing an amazing job. Just keep going, just do your little swirl motions, come through and blend it out a little bit, and then we'll come through and make it look even better at the end. Now you can even take your mop brush like I am doing here to make even bigger areas if you would like to. Again, we're just going to kind of have those stars dipping in and out of our clouds in the background. We're just going to dabble our paints and swirl on so that way it makes them big and fluffy. And also, I don't want you guys to be worried if you are getting your paints kind of outside the cloud area because I'm going to show you what I do to clean that up once we are all done. So now is the time we are going to start making those clouds even more pronounced. And this time around, we're going to, again, take our small brush and we're going to start highlighting our clouds. So we're going to be doing just around the tips, we're going to be doing up in the inside. Again, just making those kind of real light swirl motions to kind of make it look like highlighted tops of clouds, and just very, very gently coming through and just sweeping down with those paints so that way it blends in just a little bit more with our backdrop. And once you have your areas all highlighted that you would like highlighted, we're going to go ahead and come through and clean up some of that space. Taking a bit of rubbing alcohol, we are just going to place that onto a paper towel, and then we are just going to very gently come through and wipe away all the areas that we would like a little bit more pronounced with that background color. And of course, after you clean stuff up and you're like, oh, I just want to add a few more highlights, that is absolutely okay to do it because there is no right or wrong when it comes to making art. Now, after I add these last few finishing highlights, these are the ones that I don't feather out. These are the ones that are going to stay very predominant after it's all said and done. So I'm not going to do any feathering with these ones. And then is the time to go ahead and let that dry completely. And this is how mine turned out. Now, we tend to be our own worst critic, but I just want you guys to remember that your clouds are amazing and they're even better than mine. Now we're going to add one more finishing detail. We are just going to either take the back of your paintbrush and use white acrylic paint, or if you have an acrylic marker such as epoxy, you're just going to come through and add little dabs, and this will make it look like even more little stars in the sky. Now into another 20 milliliters of epoxy, I'm going to add a dash of Cherish. I just really like the way this kind of highlights and gives just a little bit more look of even more stars. Now I'm not going to be adding a lot, I'm just going to be adding a very small amount because I just want a little just hint of this glimmer shining through. After that's all stirred up, I'll go ahead and apply it to my tumbler. Place that onto my turner and make sure that I hit it up really good with my torch. Let that cure and then we're ready to move on to the next step. Before I add my finishing decal, I did go ahead and sand down my rim. I just really like how it has that beautiful finishing look to it. And this decal I got right off of Creative Fabrica. Again, it came just like this. All I did was apply an offset to it. The top portion is a just basic white vinyl, and the bottom portion is kind of this satin gold. To make sure that my decal is adhered straight, I went ahead and added some slits into the transfer tape just to make sure that I could come through and manipulate these letters so that way they stay as even as possible. But I am only having to do this because I am working with a curved tumbler. If you are working on a skinny tumbler or something that you don't really need to fuss with the decal, then obviously you don't need to do this portion of it. But after I get my decal laid down, all that is left to do is add its finishing coats of epoxy, and she is good to go. Whether you take this design and duplicate it as is, or you take it and let it inspire you to create something that is completely your own, I hope that you guys had a lot of fun watching this tutorial today. Again, if you're new to my channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys next time.